Hi, everybody. Sean McCracken from Hotel News Now here with Emmy Hise, also from CoStar, and industry legend Dorothy Dowling, currently and for the foreseeable future with Horwath HTL. How's everybody doing?
Thank you, Sean. It's delightful to be here with you today.
Doing great. Thank you.
So, Dorothy, while we're here in Phoenix, Emmy and I wanted to kind of check in with you as somebody who's had a lot of experience and knowledge in the industry. Just first of all, to ask you kind of what your thoughts are at the moment. What do you think? What did you take away from today here at the Phoenix Alice Summer Update?
I think it was a very encouraging event. I think the data that Emmy kicked the day off with, I think the growth in occupancy is an encouraging sign because most of the recovery, as we know, has been all driven by rate. But I also just think the conversation around transaction growth and anticipation of that and landing into 2025, I think gives everyone positive feelings about where the industry is going to be next year and in the years to come.
And Emmy, you obviously presented today. What's your big takeaway?
I agree with Dorothy. I think that people are starting to see that what is happening and has been happening is normal now. They're getting used to, all right, interest rates are going to be higher. What do we do with that? Okay, our level of growth is in this normal 2% range again. What do we do with that? And knowing that, okay, yeah, expenses are higher, but how are we more efficient? So it wasn't a negative thing. I think it was like, great, let's see how we can work with it and how we adapt together to make it all functional. And so in that regard, I think it was very positive.
Mm-hmm. So Dorothy, you have you had a long period at Best Western culminating for as the chief marketing officer. It was Emmy was pointing out before when we were planning this that's an experience that dovetails well with kind of the questions we'd have on the industry right now, and obviously with the bifurcation between the high end and the low end, we wanted to kind of check in with you to see, as somebody whose job it is to drive demand to the lower segments, which are now struggling. Kind of what do you do in an environment like this? Like, what's your advice to people who, want to get heads in beds in a segment that's struggling?
Well, I think you have to always understand the market for the individual product and the individual geographic area. And then you have to build out a very realistic plan. So I do think a lot of, again, the data that Emmy showcased today, but for example, 70% of the wealth creation is in that 55 plus audience. They are an audience that is very conservative in terms of their spend. So it is about building out the right kind of opportunities to win market share in that space, understanding your position in the marketplace, and then building out the right kind of business plan and marketing plan to talk to those audiences and give them a reason to come. So the panel that I had the good fortune to lead today was really about this experience economy and how the experiential component of really thinking about properties and assets is really critical in terms of growth. It's repeat business, so it's thinking about lifetime value of a customer. And it is also about the length of stay, which is that other piece that people are trying to grow. So it is really unpacking all of those pieces, Sean, and having a very strategic focus on that. I've always believed that in the economy in the middle market, it is a market that always does fairly well because as the market continues to evolve, there's going to be a trade down effect. And we're going to see that in business travel and commercial travel. I think when we see a lot of the infrastructure spend that I think, 8% of that has actually hit the market fully in terms of the investment. A lot of that is going to fall into the economy and middle market. So there's still a lot of growth, but it's understanding where those opportunities are and how you're going to compete effectively against other suppliers in the market.
Mm-hmm. And Emmy, I can't remember when you talk about the forecast, you drill in on that. What's the expectation for growth on the lower end? Is it more of the same, or are we baking in some sort of bounce back?
Definitely baking in a bounce back. The RevPAR for the economy class, I believe, will still be negative in 2024, but not as negative, but then positive in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
So Yeah, and I kind of alluded to that in the presentation today, where we are seeing that the RevPAR declines in the economy class aren't as significant as we had been seeing. So, and then the mid-scale class has shown growth in the past 3 months. So we are already starting to see it.
So did you have any topics you want to cover right now, Emmy? Let's put the ball in your court.
I really like Dorothy's panel, and I thought what was interesting about talking about the experiential travel is sometimes it's really hard to figure out the ROI on it.
Yeah.
And it is so important, and people look for it. And I hadn't heard it before, but that the ROI is in those repeat guests and length of stay, but you can't necessarily put an exact number on that. But it is important because marketing to new guests, I think, is way more expensive than the repeat guests. And I know that I recently had a vacation in this past year, and we thought, oh, we had such a great time. Like, we want to stay in the same room next time. And so it really spoke to me because I'm like, wow, that was the experience we had personally. And if that can be extended out, it's not always a numbers game, which is weird for me to say as an analyst in both the investment and the data side. But it was refreshing for me to hear that there's a different kind of ROI to consider.
For sure. And I think the other piece that I thought was a really salient point was when Omni was talking about the golf nature of some of their asset investment and how they are actually changing the experience of golf so that individuals only have to spend an hour and a half playing a round of golf, but it is around how they are winning in terms of repositioning assets, in terms of rate, significantly, because they are actually bringing a very different experience to the group audience, which of course obviously is seeing fantastic recovery, and that is going to continue to grow this year and into next.
Yeah, I'm not a golfer myself, so I haven't been following those trends super closely. But when they explain it, kind of the short courses and the, not devoting your entire day to a full 18 hole, it makes perfect sense, right? It just makes it more accessible.
And it ties into the older audience as well, because they don't necessarily have the same commitment in terms of that 4 or 5 hour experience. 1.5 hours is perfect.
Yeah. So when you talk to ownership groups, because obviously your role now is kind of around building revenue and telling people how, or not advising people on how to make the most out of their properties. I mean, how do you kind of deal with those kind of more slippery metrics or the harder things to measure? I mean, I'm sure that's a concept you're not unfamiliar with as somebody who is a marketer, and obviously return on ad spend is kind of amorphous in its own way. But how do you kind of tell people to think about it?
Well, I think it is really down to the basics. Like I was saying earlier, I think one has to look at every asset and every market, and then you have to identify where the opportunities are, and then you have to have a very thoughtful approach to it. But I do think the element of really understanding the digital marketplace today, what changes are actually in place today and what is coming. And then also truly understanding what's going on in the business travel space, because there is enormous infrastructure changes going in terms of how business travelers are shopping, how they're booking, whether travel programs have the ability to really have compliance related. There's tremendous amount of leakage in sort of the key account, strategic account process. So it is really investing in a lot of the pieces associated with the digital investment in terms of understanding customers, being able to speak to those customers in your own channel, and also really having some understanding of the business travel buyer and some of their needs, and then how we position ourselves to win more of that business as it continues to come back.
Mm-hmm. And Emmy, feel free to chime in when you ever have anything to add or any questions you want to add. I don't want to just leave you on the sidelines here. But I do want to follow up just a little bit more, because obviously you're somebody who's, I would consider, a thought leader in the industry.
Thank you.
I mean, how many people can you recall getting a Lifetime Achievement Award and then deciding I'm just going to do something else entirely? So that's kind of impressive in its own right. But I just wonder, from your position as somebody who advises people who invest in the industry, if you had to put your own money in right now, what would you put your money into?
I wish when I was much younger that someone I wish I had have understood the hotel investment market. I tell everyone that
Mm-hmm.
if when I was graduating from my graduate degree in my early 20s, if I had have understood the math of what a middle market and an upper middle market hotel throws off in terms of cash flow, I would have invested in that, and I would have done things very differently. So when I think about the owner groups today, I mean, I work with several predominantly Asian Americans that have bootstrapped amazing businesses into that $750 million to $1 billion category. And when I think about what they are doing today, they have very strategic focus in terms of the asset value, when that asset value has been fully optimized in terms of brand, when to have an exit strategy on that particular asset, and also then what do they do with those dollars in terms of their reinvestment strategy. So I don't know that I would be advising people to do anything different, Sean, because I do think that the ownership groups today are very sophisticated. They are not encumbered in terms of a loyalty to any individual brand or any particular asset. They are just very thoughtful and strategic investors in terms of how to really drive the best kinds of returns. And I love working with them because they challenge you in terms of investment strategies, where they want to go. Many of them want to look at more independent branded opportunities because they are very sophisticated and they do understand how they can work with other business partners to really optimize some of their return at a lower cost. So to me, it is that they challenge all of us to really think about the business model very differently and to support them in the way that they want to drive their growth. So I don't know if that really answers your, but what I would say is that the real estate side of the business, it's a very, very strong return. Not as good as it was maybe when I started, but it still has great return. And if you're very strategic about understanding buying the right location with the right opportunity, put the right plan behind it, and be able to put in that sweat equity, which so many of them have done, you are going to create a really nice net worth for yourself.
Emmy, I guess I'll throw the same question to you. If you had to put your own money into an asset right now, what would you invest in?
Ooh, that is a good question. I guess I more go for the independent boutique hotel route. I think more just because if I were to do it, I'd want to be an owner operator, maybe because I'm a control freak. I don't know. But I think that's the route I would go in the right location. It all comes down to location. And if there's stuff to do with stuff to be around. But I would consider, markets that maybe have been overlooked. I actually did a deep dive on an article earlier this year about how Beaverton outside of Portland is performing really, really well. And a lot of the retail spaces and different companies are moving out, but the hotel development hasn't followed yet.
Yeah.
And so those are the types of places that intrigue me. And I need to put that caveat. This is not investment advice, and don't sue any of us later. This is just how my brain is processing.
This is not our transitioning into the Mad Money era of the H&N podcast.
Correct.
I don't think I have the energy level to pull that off either. Yes, this is not a CNBC moment. We're not telling you what to do.
No.
So while we have you here, Dorothy, I'm just going to pick your brain about anything that I think of right now before letting you go down to the cocktail reception. But, not last week, but a couple weeks ago, I was down in Charlotte for what used to be the Rock Conference with HSMAI and now is Commercial Strategy Conference. And obviously the big discussion there is kind of the evolution of commercial teams. And you are somebody who is deeply involved in that evolution as an industry for a long time. I just want to pick your brain on what you think of kind of the current state of, the cross-pollination of marketing, sales, revenue management, whether you think we're in a better place than we have been historically, whether you think we're where we need to be in those disciplines.
Well, what I think is how HSMEI is evolving that commercial framework is it is about having a generalist background, but obviously bringing subject matter expertise to a particular area. But there's a convergence now. So a lot of the things that have been spoken about today, and certainly that were spoken about in Charlotte at that event, is how all the pieces of the puzzle connect. And I think everyone today has to really understand how all those pieces connect to be able to bring the right kind of thought leadership. So when I think about revenue management, and certainly it was spoken about today, AI is going to power so much of that. So it's more, the work is going to be done. And we just have to bring the thought leadership in terms of what does that predictive modeling really take us to in terms of how we think about things. But what I think about the biggest change is really how in the B2B space, it is now the B2B2C space. And so we just have to think about our business travel, our group travel, a lot of the what I consider commercial travel, how those travelers are consumers, what their expectations are in terms of how we communicate with them, how we support their customer journey in terms of shopping to booking, how we support the travel buyers in their environment. So it is bringing that marketing mindset to the business travel space, the group travel space, and the unmanaged travel space. I also think it is about having that marketing mindset in terms of employees. So some of the things that were spoken about a little earlier today is we have to understand that that is also a market, and we have to be understanding what their needs are, what their wants are, what that career destination might be for them, and making sure that we're developing up the right kind of communication, customer acquisition or employee acquisition strategy, and giving them a reason to be part of the hospitality industry.
Any final thoughts, Emmy?
I guess I would leave the final thought of this was actually one of my more favorite discussions of AI at this panel. And I think it was because it wasn't talking about AI is going to replace anyone. It's about AI helping the employees so they can be better guest facing and servicing the guests instead of being bogged down with things that are time consuming. I really love that from Save Pineapple.
For sure.
I thought that was, I hadn't heard that before. So that was one thing, my final thought of what I really liked.
You know what? That's really stuck out to me too. Because, as I mentioned, I was at the HSMI conference, which is co-located with high tech. So, is a week full of people talking about technology. And the impression I got from really everyone I talked to there who was there to attend and learn, people were so eager to hear about AI and to talk about AI and learn something concrete. And there was this real sense of frustration afterwards that there was so much talk about it, but I didn't hear anything specific or I didn't hear anything actionable. So, when folks were on stage today talking about concrete things that they do with AI right now, I think that's kind of what everybody's hungry for at the moment, right? We hear about it all the time, but we want to know real ways, how is this going to impact our lives or this industry specifically? So that stuck out to me as well. Dorothy, any final thoughts from you?
Well, when I think about AI, I think our future is it's going to take away the dull, the dirty, and the dangerous parts of the work that we have. So the element of dull was what we were talking about today. It's where we were replicating a lot of information that hopefully AI can empower us not to be in the weeds doing all that dull, but actually thinking about how we create better experiences for our customers. And I do think that's true in sales. I think it's true in marketing. I think it's true in revenue management. It's taking out all of that spreadsheet building and writing and creating visuals. So that's what I think the future is in terms of there's a customer experience component, but it's also freeing up people to actually bring thoughtful leadership as opposed to spending so much time in terms of trying to just put data together before you can actually even see what that data means.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just hope that the automation part of this means more freeing you up to do the good things rather than this is not robotics in Detroit, that's going to leave people out of jobs. It's a very different scenario than that.
Well, I do think it's going to change a lot of jobs. I think, we saw the data at Commercial Week that 50% of sales jobs will go away, and that's probably true in revenue management. But it's going to mean that there's other sales jobs, and it'll be more interesting sales jobs, and it'll be more customer-facing jobs, which I think is much more fulfilling, and that will help us actually recruit employees.
Hopefully that optimism bears true.
I am convinced it will. We've been down this path before with the internet where we had the same kind of fear, and it has empowered us in ways we never, ever anticipated.
And we saw the employment chart today going up.
Yes.
Yep. All right. Well, I really appreciate you both taking the time. I think this has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks,
It's
Sean.
great to be here.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This episode of the Hotel News Now podcast was recorded on July 11th, 2024, and edited by me, Sean McCracken. Thanks for listening, and visit hotelnewsnow.com for the latest industry news every day.